Hi folks, HR Funk here, with part one of what I expect to be at least a three-part video series where I'm comparing and contrasting two different rifle scopes, both of which were sent to me at just about the same time for a review, and both of which have very similar features and characteristics. The one you see in front of me here now comes courtesy of CVLIFE. This is one of their BearPower scopes. This scope has a magnification range from 4 power to 16 power. It has a 30mm tube. It has a 44mm objective. It has what I'll generically call a tactical reticle that can be used for a variety of different functions, located in the first focal plane of this scope. And eventually, in part two, I am going to be discussing this scope, which is not even out of the box yet. This is a Vortex Viper PST2. This scope has a magnification range from 3 power to 15 power. It also has a 30mm tube. It also has a 44mm objective. It also has what I'll generically call a tactical reticle that can be used for a variety of different functions, located in the first focal plane. But the place where these two optics vary considerably is in their price. The CVLIFE BearPower scope sells on Amazon for about $200, and the Vortex Viper PST2 has an MSRP of $1,300, although presently it's selling on the Optics Planet website for just shy of $900. They have it on sale. So what I want to look at in this comparison is, first off, whether or not you can get satisfactory performance from a rifle scope that costs only $200 and has all of these various features. And if it is acceptable in terms of its functioning and performance, do you actually get 4.5 to 6.5 times better performance from the Vortex Viper scope, or is the less expensive CVLIFE scope so inferior and performs so poorly that you really need to spend the extra money to get a more premium optic? Now, that said, it is not difficult in the realm of magnified rifle optics to spend many more times the cost of the Vortex Viper on other more expensive scopes. So this is by all means not the most expensive scope you can buy, but it is significantly more expensive than the CVLIFE. Now in this video, I am going to be giving you a close-up look at the CVLIFE BearPower scope. I'll tell you all about its various features, its characteristics, and the performance that I'm able to discern here in the shop and just outside my home. I'll do the same thing with the Vortex Viper PST2 in part 2, and eventually we'll head out to the range and actually compare the performance of these two optics side by side. Now, as I record this video today, this is August the 26th of 2024, so if you're watching this considerably later, then all three parts, or if there are more parts, all of the parts of this video may well be out on YouTube. If not, if you're just seeing it just a week or so after August the 26th, 2024, then the other parts will be coming in the near future. So let's get right into this review of the CVLIFE BearPower scope, and I'll start this with a couple of quick anecdotes. It wasn't all that long ago, maybe 12 or 13 years ago, I purchased an imported scope for a very low price after someone had told me about how the construction quality was very good and its performance was outstanding and one thing and another. And I was just never very well satisfied with the performance of that particular optic. It didn't hold zero particularly well. It didn't track particularly well. The glass quality was okay, but I just was never happy with it. A year or two later, I bought another scope which was being marketed by a company that was, at least at the time, very familiar to the shooting public. It was also an imported scope, but it was designed by the company that was selling it, or at least one of the people that worked there, one of their engineers. And likewise, I think it was a little better than that first one that I purchased, but not a lot, and I still just was not ever completely happy with the way it performed. So coming into this, I guess I'm a little skeptical as to what kind of performance and what kind of quality I'm going to see in the CVLIFE BearPower scope. But as we've seen here recently, and I've mentioned this a couple of times in recent videos, The quality of value line optics over the course of the last decade has really improved. I think optics in general have really improved and the technology has advanced, and as the technology advances, the cost of a lot of features that we used to pay a lot more for has come down. So I'm not prejudiced against the BearPower scope. I'm actually kind of cheering for it because back in the day when I was a lot poorer, I would like to have been able to purchase a scope for about $200 that would have performed to my expectations and not had to part with even more and more money that I didn't really have at the time to get the performance that I wanted. So let's get right into the close-up look at this scope. I'll start with the unboxing, which obviously was previously recorded, and we'll go from there. And we'll start this up-close look at the CVLIFE BearPower scope the way it comes to your home, which is in the box. And interestingly, there are no markings really on the box other than a product code on the very end. Opening the box, we find a lens cloth, an instruction pamphlet, not really a manual, but a pamphlet definitely. We have the scope itself. There is one flip-up lens cover, and I haven't found the other one yet. A hex wrench, a throw lever for the magnification ring, two CR2032 batteries. That's nice. I got an optic recently that had no batteries with it. This one comes with two. Also a box which I believe contains two 30mm rings for the scope. And I've still not found that other lens cover, unless it's, there it is. It's actually on the scope to begin with. So I'm going to remove the plastic, get these other items out of the way, and start to talk about the scope itself. One last thing I just noticed was included with the scope, folks. It is a sunshade. As you see, it was positioned over the ocular lens when I took it out of the box, so I didn't notice that. Now I'll get the scope out of the plastic and we'll go on with the review. And as you can see, the CVLIFE scope is now out of its packaging and set up and ready to go for the rest of the review. And before I go on with the review, I want to mention something about the rings that come with this scope. I have seen some other reviews of CVLIFE scopes that come with rings, and the reviewers have said things like, you should just take these rings right out of the box and throw them away and buy something that's a better quality ring. But I've never heard anyone say what's wrong with the rings that come with the scope. As I was putting things together here, I was looking at these rings. They are similar design to a lot of quote-unquote tactical rings. They have dual cross bolts to secure the rings to the rail. And also they use Torx head screws, which I really am beginning to prefer because I've had so many standard hex head screws that have rounded off, or the wrench has rounded off as I'm trying to tighten them, and I go by manufacturer specifications for torque, and I use a torque wrench to make sure I'm not exceeding those specifications or anything like that. And I gotta tell you, I just don't really see anything wrong with these right out of the box. They do have a see-through feature, so if you're trying to use these with a standard set of iron sights, I think that would be difficult given the size of the objective lens bell of this scope. But even so, I would say if you buy one of these that comes with rings, try the rings that come with the scope and see how they perform for you. Clearly, if they don't do well, if the scope moves under recoil or you have some other issue, you can always buy different rings later. But at least give these a try. I don't see anything wrong with them, just putting things together here in the shop and getting ready for the review. When it comes to overall dimensions, I would say the CVLIFE 4.5 to 16 by 44 is about average for a scope of this type in this magnification range. It is not as small as some of the scopes we had back in the day that had a smaller tube and smaller objective lens and all that, but it's certainly not as large as some of the very big scopes that we see these days, usually that have a higher magnification range. The overall length of this scope is 14 inches. The width is 3.5 inches. The height is 2.8 inches and the weight is 25 ounces. The scope has a 44 millimeter objective lens that you see here, and all of the air to glass surfaces are fully multi-coated for image clarity and light transmission, and also there is an anti-reflective coating on this lens to keep down on any sort of glare or reflection coming off the lens. The BearPower scope has a 35 millimeter ocular lens with a fast focus eyepiece for bringing the reticle into sharp focus. It also has a listed eye relief of 4.13 inches at the lowest magnification setting and 3.93 inches at the highest magnification setting. And I want to check that when I get to the range, because if those measurements are accurate, that's a good level of eye relief. You shouldn't have to worry about recoil from most rifles bringing this back 4 inches, give or take, and causing an injury to your forehead or your eyebrow or what have you. So again, that's pretty good. That's one of those characteristics of scopes that probably don't get as much attention as they should. And if we're getting 4 inches of eye relief here and we're able to get a good view of the reticle from that distance, then I think that's going to work out pretty well. The scope has a 30 millimeter main tube constructed of aircraft grade 6061 aluminum. The measurement of the objective lens bell is about 2.065 inches, and when we add the flip-up scope cover, that's going to raise that measurement up to 2.273 inches. So you're going to need sufficient clearance from the barrel to the flip-up scope cover if you want to use that, or definitely to the objective lens bell, just to make sure the scope is not touching your barrel when you have it mounted to your rifle. Just in the interest of being thorough, I added the included sunshade. I can't remember the last time I used one of these things, but if you're someone who might have occasion to use one, there was no problem installing it, and it does not increase the outer dimensions of the objective bell at all. Turning our attention to the magnification adjustment ring, as I said in the opening of this video, this scope has a range of 4 to 16 power, and the adjustment ring is smooth. It's a little stiff, not bad. I did install the throw lever right here, which makes it easier to work your way through all the various magnification levels. So not bad. Certainly I have felt worse, but it's just a little bit stiff, and I wanted to mention that. Just a general comment on that 4 to 16 power magnification. That's really a good general purpose range. You can do just about anything you need to do shooting wise with magnification that goes from 4 to 16 power. On the low end, you have a wide field of view that's going to be good for moving targets, or anytime you want to be able to see as much as you possibly can in the target area. And if you need to zoom in, 16 power is going to give you a lot of magnification. I've personally used a 16 power scope out to a distance of 1,200 yards, so that is doable. You don't have to have something like 25 or 30 or more power to be able to shoot long range. But if you are shooting extremely long range, depending upon the level of precision you want, the higher magnifications will allow you to have a more precise point of aim. So as always, everything is determined by the end use of your rifle and your optic, but as I said, in general terms, I like the 4 to 16 power magnification. I'll start my discussion of the scope adjustment turrets with the left side turret, and this one actually does triple duty. First off, it houses the CR2032 battery for the illuminated reticle, which I'll show you here in a little bit. The outer portion of this turret also serves as the brightness adjustment. There are 6 brightness settings that you can cycle through as you turn this outer ring. And between each one of the brightness settings, the illumination is turned off. So if there is a particular setting you want to use and you want to turn to that immediately, you can put it in between that brightness setting and the next one. And as soon as you turn it on, it will be at that setting. So that's kind of a nice feature as well. This turret also functions as the parallax adjustment, and the parallax is adjustable all the way down to 10 yards, and actually what I notice is the turret rotates quite a bit below the 10 yard setting, So when I get to the range, I want to check that out and see just how far down I can focus this scope and see what type of a minimum distance setting we would be able to use. The elevation and windage adjustment turrets are both graduated in 1/4 minute of angle increments to correspond with the MOA-based reticle inside the scope, but there are a couple of differences, so I'm going to talk about these separately and make sure you understand exactly how each one of them functions. The elevation turret that you see here has a total adjustment range of 30 minutes of angle from mechanical center of the scope, and it also has a zero stop function that can be set to stop the downward rotation of the turret at a certain place, so you are always starting your elevation increments from that same spot. Also, the turret can be re-indexed so the zero marking always lines up with this witness mark on the scope body, and in order to accomplish both of those things, you need this hex wrench that I showed you when I was initially taking things out of the box, and you can loosen the 3 hex screws around the circumference of this scope cap and raise it off, then set the zero stop and also re-index the scope so you have it with the zero mark at that witness mark on the scope body. The windage adjustment turret that you see here locks in place to prevent it from being bumped or otherwise inadvertently moved out of adjustment. And right now I cannot turn it. In order to turn it, I have to first pull it out away from the scope body, about 1/8 of an inch or so. Then I can turn it whatever number of clicks that I want to. And when I push it back against the scope body, that locks it back in place. I can also re-index this so the zero mark lines up with the witness mark on the scope body, but this time I turn out the large screw that you can see right here, and I can even use a coin for that if I want to. Turn the screw out, take off the scope cap, or the turret cap rather, turn it so the zero marking lines up with the mark on the scope body, put it back in place, and tighten that screw down. So as I said, there are differences in function here. There is no lock for the elevation turret other than the zero stop, as I said, to prevent it from going downward at a certain point, but you don't have to push, pull, or anything else. I can just reach up here and turn that whatever number of clicks I want to. I'm going to turn these. It seems to me that the windage adjustment clicks are a little more distinct. I can hear them a little bit better and feel them a little bit better, and I'll see if the microphone will pick them up as I do this. For the elevation adjustment, I'll do the same thing. And for whatever reason, those elevation clicks are just a little more mushy than the windage clicks. But for a scope in this price range, we're talking about a $200 scope essentially, that's not too bad. This is definitely usable. You just have to be a little careful and make sure you are dialing in the proper number of clicks for whatever elevation setting you want to have. Folks, here I'm trying to get you a look at the MOA-based reticle in this scope, and as usual, it's not going too well. The reticle itself is the quote-unquote Christmas tree design, and I'm going to use the illumination to try to give you a look at what this reticle actually looks like, because it's not showing up very well here. And there's the full illumination, and you can get an idea of the shape and the increments. Again, this is an MOA-based reticle, and I'll flash up the actual illustration from the CVLIFE website so you can get a better look at it. But I just wanted to try to get you a look through the scope so you can see it from this perspective as well. And that MOA-based reticle that you're seeing here in illustration form is an etched glass reticle. It's located in the scope's first focal plane, which means it gets larger and smaller in proportion to the scope being adjusted to higher or lower magnification. Because of that, the minute of angle scale that you see is always true regardless of the scope's magnification setting. That makes it very convenient, regardless of the magnification, for use on windage and elevation holds. Also, it aids with an initial zero. When you fire a shot, you can measure it with your reticle and then dial in the proper correction in order to bring the point of impact into correspondence with your point of aim. It also aids in range estimation, and it helps with moving target leads. So you can do a lot of things with a reticle like this if you take the time to learn exactly how to use it. The CVLIFE BearPower scope is rated as being shockproof, fog-proof, and waterproof to a rating of IPX66. It also has a 1-year manufacturer's warranty against defects in material and workmanship. And that warranty is processed through Amazon, so if you have a problem, you need to go through Amazon to get it corrected. So that's going to do it for the up-close look at the CVLIFE BearPower scope. I can tell you a little bit about the performance that I've seen so far, and I wish I could show you some of this. I am getting very frustrated because I cannot get good images through a Riflescope with the camera setup that I have now, and I'm already looking at equipment that will hopefully help me to do that better in the future. But in looking through the BearPower 4016x44 scope, the glass quality is pretty good. I was outside on a very bright day looking through the scope, and I was able to see back into the shadows. The color looks good. There's maybe just a little bit of color shift that you can see sometimes around the edges, but it's not bad at all. There's really no fishbowl effect from the lens. That eye relief of about 4 inches seems to be about right, and it's pretty consistent. And when I turn the power up to the higher magnification levels, it really doesn't seem to get that really tiny exit pupil that we see a lot of times. Now, this is only a 16 power scope, and that's another advantage to scopes that are in this magnification range and lower. You don't get that really critical exit pupil where if you move your head just a little bit one way or the other, you completely lose the scope image, or you get a big scope shadow blocking out part of your view or whatever. So another advantage to scopes that don't get into the really high magnification ranges. Also, at 16 power, I'm not seeing that milky haze that you get a lot of times. Now, also with more powerful scopes, when you get up into the 20 power, 25 power, 30 power, and higher, it seems like when you get up into those really high magnification ranges, that's where you really start to notice that. It starts to almost look like you're looking through a thin fog or a haze or smoke or something like that. And I did not notice that at all when I was turning up the magnification to 16 power on this CVLIFE scope. So at least to this point, everything seems to be working pretty well, and the clarity and the quality seems to be pretty good. The reticle is not really bright enough to be able to see on a bright sunny day, even at maximum illumination. Now, I don't know on a bright sunny day who uses illumination in a Riflescope. I generally don't. About the only time I would use that would be if I was looking at a very dark target and I was trying to get some contrast between my reticle and the target for a more precise point of aim. But it's a rare day that I do that. So I really don't fault the scope too much for not being quite bright enough to be able to see on a bright sunny day, because I don't know why you would need that illumination anyway. But as I said, clarity seems to be good overall. It's not a bad looking scope. If somebody handed me this scope and they said they had paid several times more for it than the listed price on Amazon, I wouldn't have a hard time believing that. It doesn't have that cheap look and feel that I associated with some of those scopes that I talked about back at the beginning of the video that I purchased years ago that definitely were kind of cheap looking and kind of cheap feeling. And other than a little bit of stiffness in the magnification ring and also a little bit of stiffness in the parallax adjustment, everything works pretty smoothly. The elevation clicks, as I said, could be a little bit more distinct, but they're usable. It's not so bad that I can't tell as I'm working my way through the clicks that I can't feel those clicks. So all in all, as best I can tell here in the shop and from a evaluation of this scope without shooting it, it seems to be a pretty decent quality optic for $200. By the way, if you're wondering why I'm doing this comparison in 3 parts, or I should say at least 3 parts, I really don't know how many it's going to be. It's because if I tried to do everything that I just did with the CVLIFE BearPower scope with the Vortex Viper in this video and then take them both out to the range and shoot them side by side and compare and contrast their performance, this video would be about 17 hours long and nobody would ever watch it. So as it is, that's going to do it for this video. By the way, check the info section of this video for a link to the CVLIFE scope, and there should also be a discount code there if you're interested in this optic. Otherwise, as always, make sure you forward me any questions you might have or comments about this scope or the video. Make sure you also check the info section for the other discount codes that I have that are going to help you out with purchases from my other sponsors. I have to get kind of vague on this these days because of YouTube, but if you're thinking about buying anything from, say, Optics Planet or Targets Online or House of Pain Munitions or House of Pain Armament or any of those, just take a look down through there. There might be something that can help you out with your purchase. In any case, I'll see you next time, folks, and until then, good shooting. Bye-bye.